Hello guys, so I'm tasked here to discuss Article 12 of the Code of Conduct for Responsible Fisheries, and this focuses on fisheries research. Now there are 15 sections on this area, and I even find some of this kind of overlapping each other. Basically, we can go through each of this, but I already have here sort of a unified summary or synthesis of this section. So let's start. So Article 12.1, it is obviously required for every country or government to support and foster research in all areas of the society or any effort towards nation building, includes conservation and sustainability in terms of food and energy security. So Article 12 here simply reminds the state to ensure that all fisheries activities and programs should be grounded on what they refer to as a sound scientific basis. Okay, so we need this sound scientific basis to inform all areas in fisheries research. And I think that this is the only way to be able to establish efficient systems and decision-making principles or practices. So here in the Philippines, in my limited knowledge, I believe that this is also being complied with. Okay, so we all have these higher education institutions, especially those that have programs in fisheries and aquatic sciences. These schools have long been conducting both basic and applied researches. And some of their publications perhaps have been already impactful to the stakeholders. And we also have these government agencies like BFAR, DOST, CIFDEC, including some private institutions. They offer research funding, and of course not only funding, but they also have their exclusive research teams or research arms that are independent of the academe. Now, while all seem good, up and running, of course the usual issues that plague fisheries research, like any other researches, is the impact it has brought so far. It is obviously a waste of public funds, right, if researches are not converted into something advantageous for us. For example, if investments involved large amounts of money, how did this translated into national growth? Okay, have we already commercialized all our intellectual property? Have we improved our services and get decent pay from it? Again, if we failed to get the most out of our fisheries research activities based on impact, I believe that we are violating this article. Personally, however, I believe that losing resources to futile research activities is a clear violation of responsible fisheries, because it's being irresponsible to conduct good-for-nothing studies that are being funded. And as to any area of management, there should be what they refer to as an institutional framework. Obviously, the universal framework, okay, we all know that. That's being taught in schools, the universal framework of the research process. It has to inform sections 2 to 4 here. So from the troubleshooting phase, or from the establishment of our research problems or research interests, to the formulation of objectives, then to data gathering, analysis, and the eventual interpretation and dissemination of our work. All of this must follow standards or protocols. So the code only reminds us, I think, of what we have learned in school. So all these principles of research, methodologies, frameworks, they must be observed in real life. And fisheries is a vast discipline. Okay, it must look into the ecosystem, or maybe an ecosystems approach has to be adopted. Okay, 12.4 here states that we should collect reliable and accurate data required to assess the status of fisheries and ecosystems. Okay. This is probably the reason why we have, or perhaps this can justify the never-ending research on mangroves, all those mangrove ecosystem surveys, okay, stock assessments, pollution assessments. Also, 12.5 here states that you should also be able to monitor and assess, okay, the state of the stocks. Now, the best example of this, according to my colleague, Prof. Clarito, he's a former BFAR personnel. The best example for this is the INSAP, or National Stock Assessment Program, that continues to collect data on a regular basis. We also have the BFAR online publications that can show statistics, for example, on our utilization of aquaculture resources, imports and exports, and the likes. Assuming that we are following standard protocol, our country, I believe, is still performing within the ideals of the code. Okay, 12.6, the states should support and strengthen national research capabilities to meet acknowledged scientific standards. So I have already Googled here the budget for DA and BFAR. It totaled up to 50 billion last 2019. So how much of this is allocated on fisheries research is not clear, of course. But let's say we only have 1 billion of that, 50 billion. Or maybe 500 million for fisheries research alone. If you ask me, that probably is already a lot of money. So, but what research are we going to spend it in? Aquaculture, for example. Can we now stop the persistent pathogens that plague our shrimp industry? Can we now venture on intensive farming systems? How about our research in aquasilviculture and mariculture systems? Do we still need to do more research on these areas? Or can we now actively facilitate the formulation of new policies using data from our researches? Okay? Do we really care when we do research? So when money is not the problem, what more can we offer in research? So that's the always problem that they are pointing out. There's lack of funds for research. But in terms of research, what can we offer our government? Also, a sort of transparency on fisheries research is required here. Meaning it could have been convenient if there is a centralized website where every stakeholder can access the results of all the recent and relevant researches being conducted at the present time. 12.7 to 12.9, they are all explanatory of what I have mentioned a while ago. Okay, 12.7 suggests for the cooperation with relevant international organizations. Okay, and 12.8 talks about possible hazards on consumer health, while 12.9 all these aspects like the economic, social, marketing, and institutional aspects of fisheries should be adequately researched. Again, all aspects are to be researched. Environmental, social, economic, institutional, safety, including safety and health. Okay. We also have here sections on fishing gear use. Okay. 12.10 on the selectivity of fishing gears. Okay. And 12.11, before fishing gears are being introduced, a scientific evaluation of their impact on the fisheries and ecosystems should be undertaken. So how can you evaluate if you haven't introduced it first? Anyway, for many years already, I believe that research on this area has already been done exhaustively, okay, on fishing gears. So imagine it's way back in 1995 when this code was made. This section is actually recommending perhaps a needed area for research during that time. Okay, 12.12 encourages investigation and documentation of traditional fisheries knowledge and technologies. In particular, those apply to small-scale fisheries. Now, what is small-scale fisheries? Maybe we can visualize it as a sort of a small traditional fishing craft. Okay, fishermen equipped with low-tech gear, and they do a lot of labor-intensive fishing methods. We know that small-scale fisheries always involve this fishermen. They are adrift towards the sea with their boats. And of course, if we look at the definition of FAO here, it not only includes that, but it also involves all men and women that are involved in the industry, in both inland and marine fisheries. And it's not only fishing, but it also includes harvesting from, it also includes even post-harvest activities. Okay, now small-scale fisheries, of course, make an important contribution to nutrition, food security, and sustainable livelihoods, especially in those poverty-stricken areas. And it plays a major role in poverty alleviation in developing countries. But despite this contribution, of course, the issues constraining the sustainable development of small-scale fisheries, they remain poorly understood. So that's why there is really a need to do research on these areas. So it should be one of the integral areas for social as well as economics research. And finally, we have here 12.13, promoting the use of research results as a basis for setting of management objectives, reference points, and performance criteria for linkages. So just like the previous ideals I have mentioned so far, research should inform all activities, even the management systems and decision making. The code also reminds us that all people involved in fisheries research must be law-abiding citizens. So that's where sections 12 to 15 is heading here. For example, the compliance of fishing vessels with both national and international laws, including adoption of guidelines on doing research on the high seas. Okay, 12.14 and 12.15. So I'm done. Again, I feel that these sections in Article 12 can still be revised to make it more condensed and more focused. Again, this code was written in 1995, almost 25 years ago. Okay, many things have already changed. Okay, a lot of new perspectives have been considered already in terms of research and management. I also have here a paper by Hosh, published in one of FAO circulars. It's entitled Analysis of the Implementation and Impact of this Code of Conduct since 1995. Okay, this is actually a 100-page paper, so I will only pick up something here that I find interesting for a couple of minutes. Okay, 13 years after, we have fundamental changes in the fisheries sector, but only a few. Okay, and the aquaculture sector was the one who greatly benefited from this code. Okay, the code has been slow on the ground, but in some domains, such as the implementation of the International Plan of Action to prevent, deter, and eliminate illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, countries have been fast to embrace the code, okay, and implement its instrument in the ways prescribed. This study also showed that a very vast and diverse range of sector stakeholders across the entire spectrum have endorsed the code and do pursue its stated objectives. The code has been a facilitator of change towards more responsible and more sustainable approaches. But quantifying this and relating them directly to the code is somewhat unreliable. So we cannot directly say that all those best practices out there were really influenced by this code. In terms of fisheries research on country level implementation, the problem was with more on qualified personnel. Okay, many countries do not have enough personnel at hand to generate sufficient knowledge to manage fisheries research in a way that is based on best knowledge that would, of course, guarantee responsible and sustainable management outcomes. So that's it for now. I'm ending this despite the idea that there are plenty of things to look further into at this point. The effective implementation of the code is, of course, a major challenge. Fisheries research is a vast area by itself. To be able to focus more on harmonious activities, we simply need to go back into the books. So we follow protocol and we should obey the law. So as usual, implementation of the ideals of the code requires that we need to assess the problems first. We go there, we assess the problems, and then we should create policies. Okay, that's a slow process. We need to create policies that would deal with these problems. And in many cases, this task will involve difficult decisions. Of course, in the Philippines, if we do not provide enough support into the fisheries sector, our researches will simply reposition itself back into what we call as the no impact zone. And of course, this will continue to hinder efforts towards authentic sustainability. So, in terms of fisheries research, let us continue to be more skeptical until we can't, of course. Okay, thank you very much for listening.